We give kids a fresh start after they get in trouble. I think relationally, yes. Every day is a new day. Every kid is going to make mistakes and need a fresh start relationally. So I don't think as people we should hold it over kids' heads when they've gotten in trouble in the past. But I think there is one circumstance where we do need to not give a fresh start. And that is the cumulative discipline record. If you're following a progressive discipline system, you'll see that most of these systems that have matrices or frameworks that specify the consequences don't encourage you to start over. And I don't encourage you to start over with school level consequences. If a kid is in trouble for something once, the second time is different, right? The first offense is different from the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth offense. And I think there ultimately comes a point where we have to say, okay, this is a severe enough behavior, this is a repeated enough behavior that something's got to change. And it may be that the consequence changes, or it may be that the placement changes. There may be some cliff that the student is marching toward that interrupts the behavior, not just temporarily, but on a permanent basis. If we want to avoid the most extreme safety and disruption situations, I think we have to leave that on the table for those most extreme circumstances. And that means that we can't just treat every situation as if it's a first offense. We can't just completely wipe this slate clean and say, hey, I understand everybody makes mistakes. Well, we're going to make this no big deal. I think there has to be an escalating ladder of consequences in order for the consequences to work, right? Because if we do the same thing over and over again and we don't escalate, well, that's like that old definition of insanity, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping it'll work. Well, it's not going to work. And we are going to have to face the fact that at some point, something will have to give. And that's built into progressive discipline. That's why progressive discipline ultimately works, even if the consequence does not change the student's behavior, right? And I think we have this very high bar for consequences that like, oh, it should work or we shouldn't do consequences. Well, there are two ways that a consequence can work. The first way is that it motivates the student, right, to exercise self-control, to make good choices. And that, I think, is the primary way that consequences work. And they work for about 95% of kids. If you have a consequence, most kids are not going to do really terrible things because that consequence is in place. If you remove that consequence, a lot more kids are going to do terrible things for various reasons. But we have a lot of evidence on suspension statistics that says it's only about 5% of kids that will get repeatedly suspended time after time again. So the second way that consequences influence behavior is they give us some recourse. If we are in that situation where it's like this is continuing to happen, we need to approach it differently. But I don't think we need to give every kid policy-wise a fresh start every time they get in trouble. I think that's just for the interpersonal, the relational side. Let me know what you think.